Hi, welcome to my studio. I'm Tricia. Today I am going to take you through the steps of painting an abstract painting, non-representational, with cold wax medium. So it starts with oil, and then we add our cold wax medium to it. And cold wax medium is like Crisco. It's like adding Crisco to our oil paint. It gives the paint a whole new texture, lighter, airier, fluffier, just more texture. And the great thing about it is we can build up layers, and then we can pull off layers and create texture and pattern, and it's just a ton of fun. So we're going to create something like this. Or another example like this. So grab your supplies and get ready to have a lot of fun. All right, here is an exhaustive list of the supplies that you need. You do not have to have everything that I have here. Again, it may look a little overwhelming, but it is not. I will point you to the things that you definitely need, and the others that are optional. First and foremost, the things that you definitely need is cold wax medium. Then you need, well, this is optional, but I highly recommend this Galkid gel. We'll mix that together. It extends your drying time. It makes it more workable and gives the medium more strength. Then you'll also need some paint. Not a lot of paint. It must be oil paint. It does not have to be this brand. It does need to be oil paint. Like I said, it can be student grade. This is not a student grade, but the quality is not quite as important because we're mixing it with some other things that are going to give it the strength that it needs. So just 2 colors, and black and white is what I would recommend. Then we have some of our cleaning supplies. This Gamsol is an odorless mineral spirit. It aids with thinning our product and cleaning. Also, I have a little jar here full of vegetable oil. That's all it is. Go into your cooking cabinet and find some vegetable oil. It just helps to clean the wax off of things. Then we have some mark making tools, pencils, charcoal. I have an awesome tool that I absolutely love is this Stabilo Marks All. It's a great marks on anything and everything. Love these. And then I have some other thin pencils. If you have any oil pastels, those work well. Then I have some other mark making tools. These can be found anywhere online. These are rubber, I don't know what you want to call them, rubber brushes, I guess, is kind of what you would call them. I have a wide one and a skinnier one. They're great for moving the cold wax medium around. Also, something like this is good for moving around and making marks. And these are great mark making tools. I've created my own. Take an old card and cut it up. Can find tools like this online, but you can also find something like these at a local store. They're for scraping, bowl scrapers. Those are good, again, for moving your medium around on your board, on your piece of artwork. Then I have these rollers. I would recommend at least one. I have a large one and a small one. I'd recommend at least one, again, for putting your cold wax medium down on your board. Another mark making tool, I just used an old water bottle and stuck on some of that sticky foam for my pattern. That comes in handy for making cool textures and patterns on your work. Do not need to have this many palette knives, but at least one palette knife is good. I like this bigger one for mixing larger amounts. It's got nice flexibility. This one is another good one. This size and shape is another good one. And these guys are just good for, again, adding more texture and adding your cold wax onto it. Then we have other mark making and texture making tools. So anything you can find around the house that has texture in it. Bubble wrap, old plastic bag. Then string will make cool texture. So anything you see that might make some cool texture. Then I have some stencils. Some stencils come in handy. They can make some cool patterns in your work. Again, these are not must-haves, but you can find things around your house, I'm sure, that will make some cool pattern and texture. Then I have this deli paper that I absolutely love that I'm going to be using, but you could use wax paper. You can use freezer paper. I have freezer paper as well. That works really well for what we're going to use. And then, of course, more cleanup. I always have some wipes lying around. And then last but not least, actually, not last but not least, is a pellet. I have this big piece of glass that I use. You do not need to use that. You can use freezer paper is a great one, or wax paper. Any non-porous surface will act as your palette to mix your paint on. But glass, if you're going to continue on, glass is a great option, and it's fairly easy to clean as well. So that is an overview of what you need. One other thing that I did forget is watercolor paper. We're going to use a piece of watercolor paper as our substrate, as our area that we're going to paint on. You can use other things. If you have any wood panels, you could use a wood panel. However, it does need to be gessoed. And you can use like a canvas panel if you have something like that. But for ease of use, we are going to use a piece of watercolor paper. Does not matter whether it's hot pressed or cold pressed. You'll probably find cold pressed most often at your local store. So that is an overview of the supplies that you will need. Here is a piece of freezer paper that I ripped off, and I'm taping down to my work surface. It's going to protect my work surface, even though I have some paper down here already. I just want to have my surface protected because oil paints can get out of hand. They can get on anything and everything if you're not careful. So I taped some freezer paper. I've got the shiny side up. I don't know if it really matters. For some reason, I just like it better because paint will get on there and it will glide around. So I taped it down. Then I have, as I mentioned, watercolor paper. So I have this watercolor paper that I have cut into 4, what did I do? 8x8 pieces, squares. And it's kind of fun to do it this way, to do 4 at once. You're going to see how we're going to go across all of them at once. And that way we have either a series of 4, or if you only like 3 out of the 4 or 2 out of the 4, you at least got a choice. So I am going to tape these down on all 4 edges, leaving a little gap in here and putting it on as straight as I can. We're going to have a little edge that won't get painted. So I kind of want to have a straight little border if at all possible. Tape that down there. Do the same thing, leave a little gap between. Doesn't have to be perfect, because we can always, when we go to frame them, it's going to cover up some of the imperfections or not straight lines. But important that we get them all taped down around all 4 edges of all 4 pieces of paper, because otherwise it'll get caught when we're working, because we are going to work across all of them at once. And the tape I am using, you can use a painter's tape, that's fine. Although sometimes that blue gets kind of distracting. So I have this white Pro Artist tape, but you could use, I don't know how a masking tape would, you want a tape that you're going to be able to peel off without damaging your paper. So that's why the painter's paint is good. I don't know if the painter's paint comes in a plain white color or not. If it does, that would be the go-to, because I just think the white is less distracting when you're working. But, you know, all else fails, you don't have access to that, you use the painter's tape and just try to ignore the color. So there we have it. Get your edges down good so the paint doesn't seep. But there we have it. There we have our freezer paper, 4 pieces of 8x8 watercolor paper, all taped down and ready to go. All right, next step in the process is to mix our cold wax medium with the Galkid gel. And you want to mix this on a 1-to-1 ratio. So we're going to pull out, let's see. Maybe about that much. And if we, if we have too much, we're going to put it in the jar that we have. And actually, I'm going to clean out some of the old wax that was in here. This has already been mixed, but it's kind of dried a little bit, so I'm going to reconstitute that a little bit. So, so here's our jar. Now, in order to get a 1-to-1 ratio of this is what I do in order to kind of measure it out. I make a little, rectangle. Put my cold wax medium into a rectangle. Kind of get it the same thickness from top to bottom, approximately. Okay, and then I'm going to divide that into 3, or I'm sorry, not a 1-to-1 ratio, a 3-to-1 ratio. So what we're going to want to do is get this gel to be about that width. So I'm going to lay out my gel. There's about 1, there's about 2, 3, maybe a little bit more because it's a little bit longer. All right. So that's just kind of how I measure approximately a 1-to-3 ratio. And then we just go ahead and we mix it all together. So what this Galkid gel does is you'll notice it has a creamier, it kind of makes the cold wax medium easier to work with. I don't know if it thins it out, but you'll see it kind of gives it a smoother, thinner, softer working viscosity. The viscosity in it is changed a little bit. We want to make sure we get it all mixed in there pretty well. And you'll see it kind of yellows a little bit. The Galkid gel has kind of a resin in it. And so that also gives, when we add it to our oil paint, it gives it kind of a strength, because, you know, we're going to build it up and we're going to pull it down. So it also helps our paint. When we add cold wax to your oil paint, it's going to turn your oil paint into a matte sheen, as opposed to the more glossy sheen that your oils would have. So this Galkid gel also helps, so that's not quite as matte. It's still going to be matte, but it kind of has more of a satin feel. So there we go. We've got it all good and mixed. So now I am going to take it and I am going to put it in my jar here. And this is going to keep it until I am ready to start mixing it with our oils. All right, now for mixing our colors and our cold wax into our colors. I have got my two colors that I chose and my black and white. And we are going to first start with some values. We are going to mix a couple of different levels of gray that we will add into our colors. So we get a variety of values, which will make for a much more interesting painting, as opposed to having pure color, purely saturated color. So let's get started. So the first thing, I'm going to put a little bit of this powder in my gloves. This is great for extending the gloves, so I can get them on and off my hands a lot easier, especially in the summertime when it's hot and sweaty. So just a little tip, if you want to make your gloves last longer. But definitely wear some gloves while you're working. And here is my cold wax medium that we mixed up the other day with the Galkid. And I am going to, let's put out some black. About that much black. Yeah, maybe a little bit more. And white. The darker colors, such as black or red, they go long, a little bit goes a lot farther. So a lot of times I will use more white than I use black. So we're going to just start with our black and white first. And a good mixing, here's where I was talking the 1-on-1 for our cold wax. So our 1-to-1 ratio, or anything less than that, but make sure they're consistent throughout. So if you do, 25% of the cold wax into the oil paint, just make sure you do the same thing with all your other colors. So that looks, and it's eyeball. If it's not exact, that's okay. So, and I love this. This is so much fun. I don't know what it is. It just feels just so fun to mix it together. So I'm just moving it around, mixing it in. You'll notice how it gets fluffier and lighter and airier, and it's just a really neat feeling. I could sometimes just spend days mixing paint. Some people hate it. Sometimes I hate it too, but when it comes to the cold wax, it's just so much fun. Get it good and mixed. Okay, that looks pretty good. Pull out my paper towel to wipe off my palette knife as I move over to the black and mix the black up. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to get a couple of different values of gray, from a darker gray all the way down to a very light gray. So we can start with, let's start with the white here. I'm going to pull out a bunch of white. And I'm going to start with just a little bit of black to begin with. We can always add more. But like I said, dark colors go a lot further, a lot faster than the lighter colors do. I want to get maybe 4 different values of this gray. I think I said that, but let's go. That's still awfully light, so I think I'm going to go a tad darker. All right, that looks like a good one. And next we'll go more white. Maybe 50-50. Maybe we're only going to go with 3 values. We'll see. I had to move some of my paint over to the side because I'm going to bring the color in. I didn't plan well as far as videotaping where these things should go. So I'm going to show you how you clean this stuff up. Now I can just take my paper towel and wipe it off, or take a little bit of your vegetable oil, and especially if it's been sitting, and that really helps to pick up the paint, lift it up for you. And so now I can start with a clean palette for when I put my color down. All right. So let's think about what I want to do with these 2 colors. I'm going to put my red down. I mean, I might need more than that even still. And don't worry, if you have extra and you don't get to it, it's not going to dry out overnight. We might cover our palette to keep it that way, but all right. So there's my 2. Yeah, again, we got a lot of shades here, so we might need more. We might need more paint than that. So I'm going to start first by mixing, and you'll be surprised at the amount of color that we can get just with these 2 colors and these 3 or 5, if you include black and white, shades and tints that we have. So adding white to a color is a tint. Adding black to a color makes a shade. So, and these grays are tones. We're toning down the color so it's not as vibrant or as bright or saturated. Saturated is its full color. So I'm going to start first, and I'm going to take some of my red here, and I'm going to mix it up with some of this gray. And I do want to clean up my palette knife before I do that. So let's get some of that gray mixed in with that red. Now that red is a very highly saturated colors. So like I said, reds and dark colors, a little bit goes a long way. So you can see, you know, it's definitely toned down. We've got kind of a mid-tone value. I like that. That's a good, nice value. We could always add more of the gray to it if we wanted, but I think I'm just going to keep that as is. And let's take some of this red and move on to our next shade or tone and add some of that in here and see what we get. I'm just going to do that with all, and you can get all the different colors in between, you know, or the different values in between by adding more red or more gray. You know, there's no right or wrong right now. I just want to show you you know, value is the importance of value and having some variety of values and how many, you know, different colors you can really get with just these two colors. All right, and then our last, I'm going kind of 50-50 almost with these. Now, if I added the red to the white, saturation level would still be pretty high because it's got no black in it, except it would be, you know, lighter in value. So we'd get more of a pink. So those are some nice colors. They almost are purpley. So I'll show you, let's take some of this red. That's a lot of red. If we want a really light value, that's still probably a lot. And get our white. Okay, now it's time to play. I guess this is all play. But we are going to travel back in time to your childhood and imagine you just got that new box of crayons. We're breaking out some of our mark making tools. I have a couple different, you know, pencils, any kind of pencil you have, charcoal pencils, black, white pencils. I pulled out a couple of these oil pastels, some charcoal, my Marksall that I mentioned that I absolutely love. And we are just going to start making some marks. We are going to make them across all 4 pages and explore your mark making tools. These will get, majority of it will be covered up. But just have fun, you know, do you like scribbles? Do you like waves? You know, move your pencil around in your hand and go hard and light line. And, you know, we're just traveling across the different pieces of paper. And do I like zigzags or soft lines or swirly lines? Just kind of explore. All right, and now what does this one do? Notice, you know, how light can you get with it? How dark can you get with it? Just have fun. Okay, This one, let's see what this one does. Really light. Okay, now maybe some of my charcoal. I have some soft charcoal. Oh, I can get real dark with that. And what happens if I smear it? You know, get your fingers in there and play around with that. See what happens. Again, we're exploring our marks. Kind of like this dark. Okay, don't overthink it. Just play. Don't overthink it. Don't think it's ugly or it's wrong or whatever. Just play like you're a child and see what these different tools do and the marks that they leave. Light and dark, and you know, you're going to respond to everything that you do. You know, you're going to respond to it. Do I like it? Do I not like it? You know, and do I want to cover that up? You know, as we work in our layers, we're going to start doing that. And so keep in mind when you choose, if you do bring in any color at this stage, I matched my colors to the color palette that I picked out. So, well, this one's kind of, you know, I can go light with that. You know, explore your line and the way you like to make it. Ooh, broke it. Sideways on it. Does this smear? Okay. So there you have it. We got rid of that intimidating white piece of paper. We explored some of our mark making tools, lights and darks, and you know, this is discovering your own style, what you like, and do you have a lot of straight lines? You know, do you have a lot of wavy lines? Whatever it is. So now our next step is to take some of our cold wax medium, our plain cold wax medium that we mixed up, and I am going to take that and I am going to use, now you can use one of these silicone rubber tools if you have one of those. We talked about some of the different tools that we can use for moving our wax around, or using any of these kind of tools. If you don't have any of those, you could use a card to move it around with. And look at that, what that happens to be. So, so what we want to do, our first step here, is we just want to seal in our marks that we've made. Now we might get some smearing happening, and that's okay. Don't stress about that. Again, that's kind of part of the process to see what happens. And you're going to see how my wax is picking up some of the color of the marks that I made, but I'm just putting a thin coating of wax, and instead of using this, I think I'm going to use my silicone tool, and I can, you know, I'm kind of picking it up, I'm moving it around. You can see it's getting a little discolored, but that's okay. So I'm just putting a thin layer over my marks that I've made. I'm going to pull them off of here, and I'm going to do the same thing down here. Again, like I said, don't freak out if it blends. This is going to get covered up, most of it anyways. You know, some of it will show through. We're going to pull layers. It's just fun at this stage. There's not a lot of thought. It's just play. All right. I'm going back over, pulling some of it up. The wax is still staying down, but it's not as thick. I'm pulling up a little bit. And look at the color. You know, this color's even adding to my piece. It's still pretty transparent, translucent. You know, you might want to keep some areas on kind of thick. So I'm just going to do this in all of my squares, just a thin coat of the wax. Okay. So now for some different techniques. As we build up layers, the paint is going to be harder to put down specific kinds of marks and techniques. So there's certain things that you can do now in the earlier layers that are much more difficult the more that you've built up the paint. So for example, I've got one of my rollers here and I'm just going to dig into some of my paint. And what you're going for is kind of this rolling your paint on and getting it on your roller, and you kind of back and forth different directions, and you kind of get this tackiness, this stickiness that you feel. And when you get that, you're good to go. You've got it all covered. And now just, you know, lay down, going across the different layers. I'm going light. And maybe a little bit up here. I'm not really thinking a lot about where I'm putting things. And I could go dark. Maybe I want to cover in an area here. Roll it in. It's somewhat transparent. I can still see lower areas. Okay. And maybe I want to do some of that same with a different color. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm doing the same thing. Picking up the blue that I did picking up the blue. I'm picking it up with this lovely plum color, I think it is. And with this, same thing. Maybe I'm going to color in here. Go over the top of that. The cool thing with the brayer, you know, go ahead and turn it on its side, and you can pull up some of that, make some more lines. So just, again, we're exploring our tools and what they can do. So, and I try to get as much color off when I'm done with the roller on my surface that I have over here. So it cleans it off as much as possible. The next thing that works better as we have drier layers is our stencils, using our stencils. So while my layers are fairly dry, I am going to use my stencil. So I've got my stencil down on a piece of freezer paper. You can use whatever, because I'm going to use my roller to put on the paint. I'm going to use a bigger roller, and let's get some of this pink mauve color. loading up my roller with it, and I am just going to get it down on my stencil. Put it down on my stencil just like this. Get a good amount of paint and take my stencil, and I'm going to pick an area. Where do I want to put it? Right over here. And I may want to take some of my deli paper just to, I'm just pressing because some of that paint is coming up. But I'm pressing. I can press fairly hard now. Okay. I could even take what's left over on this and let's see if any of that would transfer. Now this paint is wet, so I've got to do it. If I press down, I'm pressing very gently, or else I'll pull up more than I will put down. So that's what, it's all kind of a practice and a learning. Yet a lot of it didn't come out. That's okay. Let's see what we have left here. Look at that. All right. Okay, and same thing here. We could take some of this wet paint that's left on my freezer paper and put it down. Let's go for an area that's kind of on not so thick. That blue was an awfully thick paint still, so I want to go where it's maybe not as thick. And again, it's a gentle touch because if I press hard, more will come up than will go down. And that's what happens as you start building up layers of wet paint. That's why it gets difficult to work with. There we go. We got some good texture down there. Okay. So that is, you still even have more. I could probably even try another area. Let's just see, although this is very heavy paint over there. So maybe, no, I'm going to leave it as is. All right. So our next technique that we can do, and I'm going to get some of this off my roller now. Well, I can. The next is like a monoprint. You know, mono, like it's a single print. So I'm going to take my deli paper and I can take some of my, let's see what looks like. We need some dark color in here. So I'm going to bring some of this darker blue in, and I am going to just, I don't know, paint something on here, a circle maybe of some sort. Maybe a smaller one. I want to go thick paint, thick as I can. So here's I can make a monoprint. So let's put that down. I kind of want to go, it's kind of dry over here. So let's try it over here a little bit. And again, just press lightly. Some of this is going off the page. I'll use it elsewhere. I'm not pressing real hard, but I want to get that paint down. And some of it here came up. Okay. And let's try these two circles in another location. How about, let's try them here. Now again, that blue that I put down with the roller, I put down fairly thick, so it's difficult to work over the top of until it gets drier. Now this paint will set up in about 2 to 3 hours, so if you are good at walking away for a while and coming back and then putting the next group of layers on, then that's what I would suggest you do. because you will find the wetter it gets, the more difficult it is, especially to do this kind of thing. Stencils or these monoprint. See, that didn't go down quite as much because that was used, but still it has a very neat textural quality to it. So that is doing a monoprint. Stencil, monoprint. We could do the same thing with the bubble wrap. A string is really cool. That's more when we get heavier with our paint. But let's say let's try this bubble wrap. All right, so I'm going to use my roller to put the paint down, and I am going to go with a darker mid-tone color. Now I look at what I've got here, and I look at what doesn't it have. So it doesn't have much of this darker blue color. Doesn't have any of that. Or even over here could use some of that. So I'm going to put some of that down, just like I did with this other paint is not going to get in the way. That was just there from another different project. But let's put this down. Let's put it over here. Okay. And where else? Like I said, I was starting out to do it over here. So let's see what we get over here. Okay. So what this is called is, this is our play stage. Okay. We can do, it's not pretty right now. We're just exploring, and we can end up, again, building, adding more layers and taking away layers. I got some newsprint, and you could use any kind of paper. It's just newsprint is easy to rip and to work with. And this is kind of what's called a masking technique. We're covering certain areas and going to fill in other areas. So let's say, for example, I'm going to just take it across like this. And I like that ripped edge is really nice. So this is where my rubber silicone tool comes in nice, and I'm going to look at this and what's missing from here. We've got a light value, we've got a dark value, so I'm thinking maybe a mid-tone. We've got the warm reds and we've got the blues, so we could go either way there. So I'm going to do something with like a mid-tone. And I am going to, and the paint has set up a little bit. I walked away for a little while and it has set up some. So that's good. It's not too wet. If it was very wet, you would have to work quite thick with your paint. So this is what I'm doing. I'm just pulling my paint down and covering up this area along that edge. And let's pull that up and see what we've got. All right. So this is a time where I could come in if I wanted to, and I could make some, pull up some paint and make some marks in there. I don't really like that. So let's maybe try something different. Maybe we have something like one of these tools. And I just kind of pull some paint like that, kind of like that. I could even take that paint that I've lifted and maybe add it to some other areas, leaving some little polka dots there. Okay, again, it's just exploring and playing. Now through some finishing steps. I'm not going to take you all the way through to the end, but let's just do this now. I've continued on. I've done more layers. I've brought in some other mark making tools. I'm not sure it's done. I step away from it for a while and come back and look at them differently. So at this point, you might be ready to peel off the paint. And it's ripping off my freezer paper. That's the noise you hear. But I'm going to pull off my paint and you're going to start to see a nice edge. And we can just see them. We're going to move them around and we can see them in a whole different, clearer way. Now I've got 4 different pieces and I'm seeing them all differently. And this is where you can start to play, move them around. Oh, got a little tape here. Move them around and see what you like. The heart bothers me there, so maybe I'm gonna turn that to a different orientation, and maybe this one. And this is where I look at them from different orientations to see what I like. And I look at them with a closer eye and I see what I like and what I don't like. Like this one, it's all kind of the same tone value. It needs some kind of a different shape in there. Maybe bringing back in a stencil with a lighter color would be nice. I think I would do something like that over here. So this one needs more work. This one I'm kind of liking exactly the way it is. This one I'm feeling like it needs something here too. Maybe some kind of a stencil. Maybe I'm going to change that shape a little bit. I'm not real happy with that. I'm not sure, but I'm not completely satisfied with that one. And this one I really like. I've turned it around. I like I like there's a fair amount of, quiet going on with the flatter colors, but there's some interesting layers in here that I like. I like this over here. So I think I like this one. I like these two the way they are. But these two, I feel like they need further work. So that's, I'll set those aside and maybe I'll come back tomorrow and look at them with a new eye and, and rework these. If you do go overnight and my paint is getting really thin and it is starting to dry out. So what I would recommend doing is covering your palette with some saran wrap. Okay, clean up. All you're going to do is you're going to take what's left and scrape it off. Some of it's gotten hard. I didn't have a lot. I still had some, and I could start if I had, some. I can take this and I can, protect it with some paper or some saran wrap overnight to keep it. But there's not enough that I can really do a whole lot with. You kind of learn how much you need the more that you do this. I know it kills me sometimes just to waste this paint, but so I'm scraping it all off as much as I can with my palette knife while it's still wet. If it's not wet and it's dried and you left it overnight, two things: start with your vegetable oil, and if that doesn't work, that's when you bring out the Gamsol. So, I mean, you could put this leftover paint on another piece of paper and just randomly put it down there, and then you have a basis for starting. I've done that before. So I'm going to start with some vegetable oil, and that's just kind of loosen everything. Oil on oil is the way to go, is clean it. It does the same thing with my other tools. My roller blades. Where's my other one? I don't have another one around here. Don't know where it is. I will put some oil down and lube it up. Get the oil on it, and it will come off easier when I go to wash it. So only when it gets really dry and very difficult do I bring out the Gamsol. Look at how quick and easy that was to clean. Same thing with the rest of your tools. Oil will get off any stuck on material that you've had. Oh, there's my roller on the floor. So if you find that it's difficult, you're not getting it off like you would like, again, you can bring out the Gamsol to get it off of your roller blades if you find the oil is just not cutting through. But it just takes a little bit of work, and that's why it's better if you can get it clean while you're working. That's why it's better. So that is cleanup. Thanks for joining me today. I hope that you learned a lot about cold wax medium and how to use it and how much fun it can be. I know I had a lot of fun showing you, and I hope that you will continue on in the creative process. Hope to see you again. Thanks.